This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, sorry.
Good morning, Your Highness.
Are you one of my subjects?
Indeed, I am. And an object, too. In thinking about the mind, sorry for the clumsy formulation, but I often notice that the things that intrude on my awareness are thoughts, and those thoughts generally present themselves in language. This is the inner roommate we've heard so much about. But as I think about it, those thoughts and that language seems to be a kind of secondary phenomenon.
Absolutely.
Uh, as if there was another prompt. Can you shed any light on that? And is this the right direction for me to be pursuing?
Well, it depends what you're pursuing. I think it's Bishop Barclay who said he had observed that there is no such a thing as an abstract thought. In other words, we think in terms of the senses. And by senses, I mean two things: bodily sensations and external sense perceptions. For instance, what we call a linear thought is usually we hear a sentence. We hear sounds, or we see a sentence written. If you think of a chair, either we hear the sound chair, or we see the word chair, or we see a chair. But there is no such a thing as how to say, a generic chair. When we think of a chair, we will also always see a particular chair, a specific chair. So that answers your question, I think, although it's not directly related to what we are talking about here. The thought processes are in terms of the senses. There is no such a thing as a pure thought. That is evidenced by our dreams. You see, during our dreams, we have images, we hear sounds, etc. But it turns out that it was all thought, right? And even when we think in our dreams, we also think in terms of either image or bodily sensations. But in what is called abstract thought, we also have images. For instance, I think that the mathematicians, for instance, they visualize space in a certain way and objects in spaces, relationships between objects in space. And that's where the creativity takes place, because there is much more playfulness in organizing objects in space, especially if you can visualize in 3 dimensions, than there is in a linear, logical type of form of expression. So part of the, of course, once you have discovered the answer to the question you had, and you get to the answer using what John Klein used to call geometric representation, then the formulation of your understanding in a logical form is going to maybe serial, right? But that comes after the fact. It's not that which led to the discovery. It's one way to communicate the discovery in a very foolproof fashion. And the guy who is reading your paper then is going to move from the serial and build again in space his own representation then, right? Now, the question that arises then is that, yes, so what is the nature of abstract thoughts if there are no abstract thoughts? And I think the abstraction is a form of understanding. For instance, when we move to a specific chair, to the concept of chair, right? There is a moment when we understand that lots of objects, that a set of objects have qualities in common, because we can sit on them, but we can sit also on a stone, right? So that they are man-made objects, and they usually have 4 legs, etc., right? So, and then we say, okay, we understand that there is a class, a set of objects of a specific nature. This understanding is itself not a thought. It's instantaneous. And now I know what a chair is. So now what I do, I put a label on this understanding, which is the word chair, right? So the word chair is simply a reminder for me of my understanding of what a chair was, right? And then I move, for instance, from the concept of chair to the concept of furniture, right? And that will require a similar understanding, because there are all kinds of objects. They are all man-made, right? And they are in the home, and they have a functionality, but they are kind of different. What do they have in common? I abstract their common essence, if you will, and that furniture, right? And etc. And that's the word furniture. So there are all kinds of levels of abstraction that we have acquired, and so there is a distinction to be made between the label, the concept as a label, and the concept as an understanding. You see? And you know, we have this in France, École Nationale d'Administration. It's a French equivalent of, let's say, Harvard Business School or something like that. And they have oral tests they have to pass, and which is a debate, right? They have to show that they are good at debate. So they practice. And one of the themes that is given to the practice is talk for 20 minutes on the distinction between the notion of concept and the concept of notion. So, but there is a difference, because the concept is the map, the name, the concept of chair. The notion means how I moved from the observation of chair to the concept. So the notion refers more to the understanding, whereas the concept is now okay, now it's getting really nerdy, right? So everybody is asleep.
Now, you just said that's not what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And I would have thought that interrogating my experience in terms of thoughts and where they come from and what they do is part of what we're doing
Oh,
here.
it's interesting. I think it's interesting to the distinct. Yeah, if you ask yourself, where do thoughts come from? But a thought doesn't come from another thought. That's a common mistake to think that a thought generates a thought. Thoughts don't have children, right? There are no generations of thoughts. Between thoughts, there are gaps. And out of this gap, the new thought emerges, right? So, or perception or whatever. So thoughts come out of thin air. They come out of our awareness, right? They are creations. They are flowers of the mind, if you will. So yes, if we investigate where do they come from, of course, we reach awareness. If by looking at how do they happen, by looking at it experientially and not conceptually. Because conceptually, we believe that a thought creates a thought, which creates a thought, etc. No, because precisely of these gaps I mentioned between, for instance, the first concept and the higher concept, there is always a gap of understanding, right? But that is a general process. The thoughts, they all come out of thin air. Now, another distinction which is relevant to what we are talking about here is the distinction, the fundamental distinction between innocent thoughts and ignorant thoughts. So an ignorant thought is a thought which is based upon the assumption that awareness is limited and separate, right? So once that has been accepted without evidence, right? So out of our freedom, because there was no evidence to believe that to be true, then all kinds of thoughts will emerge that are consistent with this fundamental belief we have accepted. And these are called ignorant thoughts. And this ignorant thought will generate psychological suffering. All the other thoughts are innocent, right? No matter even practical thoughts or thoughts that seem to be
They have had
stupid,
the
but if they
vaccine
don't
when they really haven't
origin
and are
or
putting you at
thoughts
risk.
that seem to be related to me, but in fact they relate only to the body. Right? The thought, I have a pain in the back, right? It's not an ignorant thought, right? It may be a factual thought, because I in this case refers to the body and not to awareness, right? Awareness doesn't have a back, and therefore awareness cannot have a pain in the back, because awareness doesn't have a back. The body has a back, right? So the body has pain in the back. Awareness doesn't have a pain in the back.
Thank you.
Can we spend a few minutes
Please,
talking
please.
about a non-dual take on grief? As I'm getting older, it seems like I'm experiencing a lot more grief because, as we know, my contemporaries are starting to pass away. And, I'm dealing with that often. I think I have a good handle on it, but I'd love to talk about that for a few minutes.
No, yes, it's okay, I think. Yeah. Just tap with the finger. No, tap on top. Not working. It's a new battery. Yeah, yeah, it's working.
We have light. You want me to repeat the
No, no,
question?
no, no. There are two forms. I mean, the mourning process, right, is twofold. There is a part of it which is personal, and there is a part which isn't. The personal part is not really about the person who has passed away. It's about ourselves. It reminds us of the impermanent nature of the human body. And if we believe to be as awareness dependent on this human body, we experience psychological suffering. The psychological suffering becomes more acute in this case, although it has always been there. The suffering of ignorance, which is directly related to the belief that awareness is impermanent, mortal, uh, is unavoidable and is always on the back burner. But some events in life, such as the passing away of a friend or the sudden onset of a disease in the body, brings this permanent fear to the front burner, right? So when some of our friends passes away, and that accelerates as we get older, I know the same thing. I am kind of related to my alumni, from my school. And as you get older, you see, oh, so and so just passed away. Yeah, I get email, and in the process, this body is 77 now. It accelerates, and the other part is, I would call it a sweet sadness. If I could use a metaphor for that, I would take a beautiful adagio or andante of a Mozart piano concerto. It's sad, but it's sweet. There is no real burning in it. There is no bitterness. It just reminds us of the love or whatever, of the humor, of the friendship we have shared with this person. So there is a mix. And as we liberate ourselves from our own fear of death, the personal part of grieving disappears. It's normal. When this friend passed away, we remind him in his youth, in his childlikeness, in his humor, and so on. And it's a sweet memory, but we don't really suffer. It's part of life, of the body, right? So yes, that's what I would say, what I could say about that.
There. I'd like to go back to the thoughts that we were talking about earlier. As you may know, I'm with my 3 and 5-year-old grandchildren now, really could be my grandchildren. Anyway, watching them as I have since they've been born and being of this ripe old age, it's a very different experience than I had with my own children or what I call my first set of grandchildren. The point is that the thoughts that you've described so many times is just coming out of thin air. It seems like that thin air is really thick. It's been fascinating, awesome, mysterious, I don't know how to explain it, to watch these children that I've seen in hell since infancy. All of a sudden, think this, all of a sudden say this. Where did that come from? And they're obviously from the same parents, and they're so different, each from the other, from their parents, from me, or the same. It's like these thoughts, yeah, are thick. They don't just seem odd. I mean, I don't, this has always puzzled me, and I don't know.
Well, you cannot say anything about the thoughts of your children. You cannot say anything about the thought of your children experientially, right? You cannot say anything from first-hand experience about the thoughts of your grandchildren. The only thoughts you have first-hand experience of are your own thoughts. Me neither.
Yeah, so when you say they just come out of thin air, that thin air seems thick with all,
How do you know it's thick
well, I don't know how else to say
if
it.
you don't see it?
The thoughts that come to me are not the thoughts that come to you.
How do you know that? It depends what you mean by me and you.
Okay.
Define me and you. I think we should change the battery now, or it's like, how can I say? Um, are we looking for batteries?
You want to open the back. That's it.
It's my turn.
It's your turn.
it's like this guy, he's traveling on Southwest. And his plane lands safely. And there is a news that another plane has crashed of Southwest. And he says, oh, thanks God, my plane didn't crash. Then the neighbor said, don't you own share in Southwest? So it depends what is meant by my plane. In this case, he meant one thing and the other guy meant something else. So what we mean by I, and we have to make the determination, what is the true me? Is the true me the body or is the true me the awareness? That's all. If you always live your life based upon the assumption that the real you is the body, you're cooked. And you have to revisit this assumption. But it's so deeply, deeply rooted in some of us that it's not easy. But ultimately, we are what we choose to be. If we want to be the body, we are the body. And then we have to live by our choice, the consequences of what we choose to be.
I guess within my question is also it's difficult to know the wisest, I guess, spiritual thing to say to children, the small, to do or not to do, to guide people, because they're their own body minds, and then you have these other understandings, but how to how to guide them. I think we've probably had
Yeah,
this
but
conversation before.
what we call guidance to what, towards which goal? What's the goal? Because I think that if the goal is happiness, they should be our guide instead of us being their guide. You see what I mean? We should take, because to me, very young children seem happier than the parents. So if the goal is happiness, what do you have to teach them if you're not happy, right? If the goal is happiness, take them as your children, as your teacher.
Yeah, their happiness is to play all day and run out in the street and eat chocolate and all that fun stuff.
Well, what's wrong with playing all day? What's wrong with playing all day? Why shouldn't life be playful? It's come all these things that we have superimposed, that life should be full of suffering and life should be a chore. What is wrong with the poetry and the playfulness of life? Someone once had said it's wrong. Yeah? Just as what's wrong with sex? Nobody among us was born out of a virgin, I think, right? So we just pretend it's not the case. Especially this Anglo-Saxon culture is so puritanistic. We are the heirs, of Queen Victoria, where they put dresses on the tables because the tables had legs and it was too sexual. And when I see now what is amazing is how in the political spectrum, there is a kind of back and forth from the left to right, from right to left, of the same ideas of Puritanism, of all that thing. It swings, it goes back and forth. It's amazing. And that we become a controlling, judging, and canceling society, puritanistic. Amazing. Where is freedom in all of that? Where is exuberance and life seen as a, yeah, in its playfulness and poetry and beauty and childlikeness, innocence.
Francis, excuse me. When I think about my mind, I refer to a ensemble of thoughts and feelings and memories and impressions that I refer to as me. But they seem to be organized in some way. Otherwise, I wouldn't identify them as me. Is there an organizer or some sort of organizing principle that makes
Yes,
that work?
because there is organization in the world, in the universe. And as a result, this universal order also informs, in the sense of gives form to the human body mind. I mean, the world is not pure randomness, right? It's not white noise, right? There is order. There is that enables us to speak, to see each other, etc. There is a tremendous amount of order in the universe, and it's not infinite entropy, right? It's so this order is also within, of course. So there is it's not an surprising that there would be order. But that doesn't mean that you are this ordered architecture of things. You are the beholder of that.
Do I infer my own order because I see order in the universe?
What we can we have to, when we speak of order, we first have to kind of define a little bit what we mean by that, because the first concept is, the one of order set. In other words, that you take an object, and for every object, you can see this object, for every two objects, you can say this object is in front, this one is in the back, right? So it's a kind of linear order, but it's not, when we say there is order in the universe, that's obviously not that which we are referring to. So we are referring to rather to something which could be called harmony, right? And what harmony is, it's about rhythm, kind of and what rhythmic object or sounds, music, everything is rhythm in the universe. It is this omnipresence of rhythms in the universe that uh, kind of points to the common origin of all things. Uh, but going back to your question, does the fact that there is rhythm or order in the universe imply that the common origin is itself ordered? No, because for there to be order requires a multiplicity of things, right? In a rhythm, you need columns, like here. You need columns that are equidistant, that are all the same, and it creates a rhythm, right? And then you see, oh, there is order, right? But it requires multiplicity. The common origin, right? Then there is no multiplicity. It is the origin of order, but it is itself, it is not ordered. It is that which orders the things, but that the orderer is not ordered. It orders.
Thank you.
Francis, at point of understanding, you said awareness is aware of himself. Okay. When we listen, as we listen, we understand. Like I'm listening to you, and I, especially during the nerdy question, and nerdy answer, when I listen, as as I listen, I understand. And then if it is too nerdy, my brain gets tired. So if awareness is not in the brain, why my brain get tired? Because then understanding it was understanding.
It's not your fault, it's my fault in this case.
Yeah.
And it's because my brain is too complicated. And whereas understanding itself is always utterly simple. When we understand, it's very simple. So that's why we should never worry about that which is complicated or complex, because that which matters is understanding, and that understanding is simple. So what I say here, take what touches you, that which you understand, and that's plenty. That's more than enough. It's more than sufficient. Don't worry about the rest.
But when I understand, you say something and I understand.
That's perfect. When you understand, you understand.
But if I keep understanding, for a prolonged time, then the brain is tired. When we listen for 1 hour, we are.
Yeah, that's
Sometimes
sufficient.
it goes.
Then you don't need to think about it necessarily. You don't have to force yourself. But if a thought about something comes to you, then you welcome it and use. It may take you back to the same place of understanding, you see. And we go back there again and again and again. And up until we don't leave that place. but we don't live it. When we don't live it, we don't think of it. That's why I only answer questions, because the questions make me think of it. But on my own, I would stay here and listen to the whatever, look at you. Say it's a very nice day in Temecula, beautiful, the trees, so beautiful here, beautiful people, nice to be here. But these would be the thoughts that would come to me.
Okay. When we listen, if when we listening, we are awareing of itself. At the listening part.
When we understand, yes, and after we have understood, we remain there because we are always awareness, and we are nothing else than awareness. And for as long as we remain nothing else than awareness, we are in perfect meditation. And then it may happen that we say, that we shrink back and we believe again that this awareness is dependent upon the body, that this awareness needs something, that this awareness, it is fundamental distinction between awareness and the body. So, as I said earlier, awareness doesn't have back pain because awareness doesn't have a back. To have back pain, you need to have a back. Awareness doesn't have a back. The body has a back, the body has pain. Awareness perceives the pain, yes, perceives the body.
Thank you.
Hi, Francis. This is in continuation of the thoughts. So the thoughts are occurring. Source of everything is consciousness, so thoughts are occurring. But somewhere along, due to my ignorance, I think they are my thoughts. Because I'm not owning all the thoughts, right? There are certain thoughts I think are my thoughts and owning them.
That's perfect. They are your thoughts.
So,
because they appear in you, they are made of you, and they disappear in you.
But I'm not thinking at that moment I'm consciousness, though. I think when I'm thinking something is mine, the whole think of saying something is mine happens only when I have shrunk and felt like I'm this limited body or mind, right?
But then nothing is yours.
Exactly. So what is the
moment you identify with the body, nothing is really yours.
But in my ignorance, I'm thinking they are mine.
That which can be taken away from you is not yours.
Exactly. I know that I have no control. It goes away, even though I'm owning them for that short duration, thinking it's my thought. And then, as you said, there's silence. But if I'm not aware of it, then
you're trying to justify the fundamental mistake that you believe to be the body. Okay?
yes.
So then, all I can say to you, revisit this belief. See what's the evidence to believe that awareness is the body, that you are the body. As awareness, the thoughts are yours.
Yes.
The body is yours.
Yes.
And the world is yours. No difference.
Agreed. But then if the fact that some thoughts bother me, I don't expect awareness ever to be bothered by anything because awareness knows there's nothing to lose, nothing to gain.
Yeah.
But when I'm worried about, when some thoughts bother me, then I know I'm not awareness.
Investigate. No. Why are you bothered by things?
because thinking myself to be this limited body or mind and whatever that fears and whatever else that comes with it.
Yes. So you said you are bothered. The only reason you are bothered is because you believe to be a separate body.
Exactly.
What's the evidence?
There is no evidence.
So you are bothered. So then it's your choice to believe to be a separate body.
The choice doesn't seem to be so consciously or made very aware. Like it's just
Well, I
happening.
am making you aware of it. So who
Yes.
cares? And the question, don't go back to the past, because right now you have a perfect opportunity to check it out. Why do I believe as awareness to be dependent upon this body?
Right now, I don't believe it.
So stay there.
Then the question is, how do I stay there? Because it's supposed to be effortless.
That's very simple. Can you imagine any intervening fact or event that could possibly change this discovery that you have no evidence that awareness is dependent upon the body? Can you just imagine anything that could happen that could possibly change your mind?
No,
This no is a little timid.
I know. Because I know that you said I can't go to my past because I know I've done this in the past. Like,
Don't go to the past,
exactly.
because we are
So
not
that's why it's
talking about
timid.
the past, you're talking about the future.
Okay, let's talk about the future. I'm worried based on my past that in the future I will go back to forgetting.
No, forget the past. You're talking about the future. And my question was, now that you have seen that there is no evidence that you can find that this awareness that you know to be, because you are the one hearing my words, right?
Yes.
That this reality, which is hearing my words, that you know to be, is dependent upon the body. There is no
It's not.
evidence. Okay, now projecting that into the future, is it possible? Can you even just envision the possibility that there is some evidence that is missing right now that could come to you in the future? That would change your mind.
There's nothing that I can think of that can do that right now.
Okay, nothing that you think of. It's very different to something which is absolutely unthinkable. Because nothing that could think of,
Yeah.
but something could come up,
Yes,
right?
You heard me right. Yes.
Right? But something unthinkable, such as being half pregnant.
I think I'm not able to drop the past. That's the thing then.
Yeah, I can see that. But I'm not asking you to drop the past forever, your dear past. Just for the time being, just bearing with me and understanding that there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that awareness is dependent upon the body.
Agreed.
And that, moreover, there cannot be ever such evidence. Moreover, that it's an impossibility, just like being half pregnant.
For some reason, I don't seem to have that conviction and I can't lie to you. So I have to figure that out.
Yeah, but if you
I
don't,
can't think of anything right now.
yeah, but the problem is that you have to investigate. Why is it that I don't have this conviction? Because you must have something. Yeah. Either you are speaking at random, not making sense, or you are speaking out of a feeling or whatever, something that is telling you, Francis, I cannot agree with you for some reason. I am asking you to find this reason.
This is from the memory about how I have in the past behaved like as though. So I've spent more years of my life in this body behaving the other way. And this is something new, and I don't have confidence about it because I've not lived long enough thinking I'm or aligning myself to be consciousness. So I don't have evidence, but at the same time, there's something in me says, oh, there have been moments in the past you've thought you were consciousness and then you've always shrunk back. So, but you're telling me not to use the past, but then this moment I have the memory of it.
Okay, so what you're telling me is this. Because I have believed in the past so many times something to be true, for which I now discover that there is no evidence.
Yes.
But because I have believed it to be true so often in the past, that I feel is a good reason to still believe it to be true.
No, I'm not going to believe in true. I have this bad habit of going back to the.
No, that is still a good reason to have doubts about that which I'm discovering now that I was wrong.
I
In
think
other
that's what
words,
I'm telling
what you are
Yoda.
telling me, the fact that I've been wrong so many times in the past, I am now discovering that I was wrong in the past.
Yes.
But you are telling me because I have been wrong so many times, that gives you me a good reason to doubt my current discovery.
Because I think when I'm answering that, I'm not answering that
So
from the place of
let's
consciousness.
take another example just to drive this nail, right? This man or woman, doesn't matter, has what we call in French an artichoke heart. Artichoke heart, meaning a heart, a bleeding heart, you know?
What does it mean? Bleeding heart.
A
Okay.
very soft heart. So that
Okay.
you will understand.
Yes, yes.
And has been married 10 times and divorced 10 times, right? Do you understand what I mean by artichoke heart? You know, the first come, first serve basis, right?
Oh my gosh. I got it.
You got it?
I got it.
Okay, okay,
That sounds.
okay. So then her wisdom is telling him or her, okay, don't fall into the trap again, right? You have done that, first come, first serve basis, because I need, you know, I need the companionship. I freak out when I'm alone. I go to this single bar, and the first guy or girl who shows up, oh, here you go. And so her wisdom or his wisdom is telling them, don't go for it again. They say, I doubt this wisdom because I have done it so often in the past that it seems that I was right. Why? How could possibly the fact that I've been wrong so many times in the past justify me being wrong once again? I mean, it's kind of a twisted thing.
I agree. It's not giving credit to the wisdom or the knowledge or the discovery. Full credit. I agree.
This think about, you know, first self, yeah, about mating. One day with Laura, we were watching something on TV, which was a documentary on sea life, you know, on the undersea. And there was a mating of this little animal, so that was really fun. The male is in a hole in the invisible in the rock. And when the female passes by, so whoop, runs back. It's instantaneous. Back in the hole. It was so funny. It's a mating habit in nature, you know.
Okay, I have to, I cannot say I'm going to behave stupid. So, I mean, it's stupidity. I see what you're saying. And so I have to take a stand as conviction. And I think that means, like, when I say I don't know, it just shows, I don't know, that stupidity or whatever I don't want to have artichoke card. That much I know. So that nailed it.
Once is enough, right?
Yes, more than enough. Thank you.
But yeah, we have to see how when we repeat things, they feel safe, and
Exactly.
we are programmed. The body mind is programmed like that. We are hesitant to. It feels unsafe if we move out of the beaten path.
Exactly. Exactly. Even though you know it is stupidity.
But that's how paradigm change have happened. Going out of the beaten path, and it's how evolution takes place. Darwinian evolution. You have a mutation, right, in the species. At some point, the species goes out of the beaten path. You have a mutation, and that's how we are the heirs of this, right? As human bodies, yes.
Thank you.
uh, from Lewis. When we feel hurt or get angry, we usually,
What?
when we feel hurt or get angry, we usually project that on the other person. But from the absolute level, there is no separate other. So can you explain what happens when we feel hurt by a so-called other?
Now, if we observe how our decisions happen, I'm talking about our deliberate decision, not our instinctive, automatic, uh, deliberate decisions, they appear as a thought. and or that lead to a final decision. The question then is, do we really choose our thoughts? We certainly believe we do. We do, as a separate individual, choose our thoughts. But if we look within, if we observe the process, it's that our thoughts different from greater medical events happening in the world, and for a good reason. We are not separate from the world, but just as meteorological events happen in the world, thoughts happen within us. After the fact, that thought appears,
Is the connection bad with
which
everyone?
authorship of the thought is I am
Oh,
the
yes,
one.
I'm having a
Yeah.
lot of trouble.
It's bad.
Yes, bad.
I thought it's my side, but it's not. I
The
found out. It's like,
problem
Bad sound and bad image here.
is
it's all choppy, and now I don't even have video. Okay.
thought was not present in the first thought. They couldn't probably have thought. If you think about that, you are the process will lead to the conclusion that experientially no thought. That's our freedom to choose as a separate entity is bogus. There is no such a freedom. There is simply the appearance of such a freedom as a separate entity. Because this separate entity is nowhere to be found when the thought appears, when the decision appears. It appears as a second thought after the fact, as my teacher used to say, like the clown taking a bow after the performance of the ballerina in the circus. The clown didn't dance. The clown wasn't there during the performance. He came afterwards to take the applause. So the separate entity wasn't there. Actually, has never been there. It exists only as this afterthought, which is, it exists only as a belief that there is such a separate entity, that there is such a separate decider. Now, if there is no such a separate decider, who decides? The one who decides, the thought, is the same one who decides the weather. Call it God, call it the universe, call it limited human entity. When that is understood, the guilt of this fictitious personal entity disappears with the personal entity. We feel guilty only because we believe to be a separate consciousness, a separate free willer. Now, the objection may be, well, but then it's open season for murder, mayhem, and not at all. Not at all. First, because if we don't identify with a personal entity, we are the other. We are the same awareness in all. So then there is love. Because love is this, is a recognition that you and I are the same reality. So then there is not going to be murder. There is no, going to be hate, etc. We are all the same. So there is nothing to be afraid of this. Now, going back to what you said, I would like to atone for my previous sins. That is not a sense of guilt. It could be something taking responsibility in the now for past actions. In the past, as awareness, I've chosen ignorance. Now it's time in the now to take responsibility for it and to do my best through this human body mind to fix it. To put this human body mind, if you will, at the service of love and justice.
I don't hear anything.
Responsibility in which there is nobody, nothing personal, and which is only in the now. So that's the answer to the second question. Regarding the first question is about I feel bad when people hurt me. They say things that hurt me. Well, there is a difference between people saying things that hurt you and people doing things that hurt you. Huge difference. And we tend to live in a culture in which we don't make this distinction. And that is very detrimental to the freedom of speech. And as a result, to the freedom of thought. The freedom of speech and the freedom of thought, which enables us right now to share the most beautiful thought about the truth, about love, about beauty, is made possible only because we live in a culture which allows for stupid people to say stupid things. We have to realize that. And history has taught us that it is a very fragile moment in human history. And that in the past, the truth was not openly available the way it is right now because of the tyranny of thought. And we have to protect as much as we can the possibility of free expression, even if it requires for stupid people to have the freedom to say stupid things. Now, when stupid people tell us stupid things, what should that affect us? It affects us only to the extent that we don't see the stupidity in them. In other words, we buy their argument somehow. That's why it affects us. And that is made possible only because of our own stupidity. And our own stupidity has its root in believing that we are a separate person. That's the source of all stupidity. In other words, if we buy their argument they take us down into ignorance. So you have to realize that the only reason why what people tell you about you affects you is only because you buy their sales speech. Don't buy it. They are con artists. They don't know they are con artists, but they are. You know better. You know, if they tell you you're stupid, how can I be? I am this awareness. I am beautiful. I am intelligence itself. So tell me I am stupid. That's fine. It's your problem, not mine. You see, and besides, you are also the same intelligence playing the game of being stupid in this moment. Don't tell them that because they may hit you. Now, that's what people tell you. Very different from what people do to you. Now, if someone slaps you on the left side of the face, you don't necessarily give them the other side. How stupid is that? I mean, I know Jesus, but he may have done that in a very specific case to teach a very specific lesson. But that's the problem with dead gurus, is that what they did or what they said is then taken out of context and put in a general rule. But if you go to that, you say, okay, oh, this guy, this 14-year-old has sold marijuana to my 10-year-old boy. You know, okay, good. Go ahead. You slap me on the left. Well, why don't you sell him heroin now to my son? I mean, that's this type of stupidity. No, you take the guy and you do that. And if you do that once again, you know, you have a bad time with me. Someone comes, you know, and asks, comes with a pistol on you, and you say, okay, no, if you can, you know, you take your shot. It's very simple. In other words, big difference between what people say and what people do. Anyway, that's long, but in both cases, it shouldn't affect you. Your wisdom should tell you what is the appropriate things to do. The problem is that what people say to you shouldn't affect you. What people do to you is going to trigger in you appropriate action. As my teacher said, you may kill this person or you may invite this person to have a cup of tea with you. It depends on the circumstance. We don't know what is going to be. In both cases, it will be the right action.
From Maladen. Hi, Francis. Could you talk
From
about
whom?
Maladen, Mladen, Maladen Despik. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Francis. Could you talk about effortless action when experiencing suffering? Would such action be like spontaneous surrender?
Well, this when experiencing suffering, there is an ambiguity here. If what is meant by suffering, does it mean pain, physical pain, or does it mean psychological suffering? If it means psychological suffering, the right action is to investigate who is suffering. That's the only right action that I can think of.
Sam. Okay, he says he wishes he was here. Let's see. Ike Swoboda asks, "Hello, Francis. Thank you for answering my question last Saturday. They really clicked on a deep level. Today I have two questions. In case that's too much, I can ask again another day. First question. On an intellectual level, I can totally see now that there is no evidence for consciousness to be dependent upon the body, and therefore to be limited. But on the level of bodily sensations, it still feels like I am stuck in it. I guess that's because I have believed it to be the case all my life. It's in my bones, so to speak. This seems like a paradox because I also can see that the body appears in awareness. I'd love to join one of your gatherings in Temecula for your work with the body, but since I'm from Germany, that's going to be quite a trip. Is there anything you can suggest remotely for now? Thank you.
Well, just a small infomercial. I've been in Paris the week before and the week after Christmas. And I'll be near, in der Nähe von München in August oder Juli. What's the name of the Bayern, in Bayern, Bavaria. Yeah, so regarding the question, the intellectual understanding that there is no reason to believe that awareness is dependent upon the body is not just intellectual. And actually, it's up to you to make it deeper than intellectual. For the following reason. Let's see it as a statement. That which the reality that perceives, we have no evidence that it is dependent upon the perceptions it perceives. Now, the perceptions belong to three different categories: bodily sensations, external sense perceptions, and thoughts. So if we want to check this statement experientially, we have to check it against each of these three types of perceptions. And we have to ask the question, when I have a thought, is there evidence that that which perceives a thought is dependent upon the thought it perceives? When I have a sense perception, is there any evidence that that which perceives, that the reality that perceives the sound or the sense perceptions is dependent upon that which it perceives? And the same thing is true then about the body. So then we go to the experience of the body, and we have the experience of being aware of the body. And we can ask the question, is there any evidence in this moment that that which perceives this sensation in my head or in my hand or in my knee is dependent upon this specific perception? And you see that in each of these cases, experientially, the answer is immediate. So then to qualify that intellectual is a kind of revisionist a posteriori, is a posteriori denial of the experience. So that's why it's so important to come back to it and to avoid to qualify it intellectual, because it's so quick. The verification of the statement, there is no evidence, either in the realm of bodily sensation, of sense perception, or thoughts, that awareness is dependent upon any of these perceptions. We verify it. We verify it easily and so quickly that then we qualify as insufficient, as merely intellectual, whereas in fact it was whole and complete in the moment. It's just that the whole habit says, no, it's not possible. How could that be possible? It's like, how could it be possible that time and space wouldn't be independent from each other? How could that be possible? That's the scientific community in 1904, up until Einstein came 1905. Everything changed. So we don't want to, you have to understand that this intuition you had is not merely intellectual, that it leads immediately, it is immediately verifiable or falsifiable experientially with each of the three realms I mentioned. It's just that you need to repeat it again and again and again and again to overcome the habit that says, it's insufficient, it's not enough, it's impossible, it's not enough. It is in opposition with everything everybody believes. Like the earth is flat, right? That was a common belief. The sun rotates around the earth. Everybody believed that way. That didn't make it true. The earth is at the center of the universe. That didn't make it true. You have to be open. And we have to be open, especially if the arguments that are presented are not stupid. If our intelligence kind of says, yeah, there is something to it, there is something that makes sense. If I say something, for instance, everything we know it through consciousness, right? Everything we have ever known, everything we will ever know, we know it through consciousness. Therefore, our knowledge of everything we know is dependent on our knowledge of consciousness. That makes sense, right? That makes sense. It's not very different from a physicist saying, well, everything I know about the spin of this electron is dependent about my Stern and Gerlach device and my knowledge of it, how it works, the direction of the magnetic field, etc. In other words, our knowledge of an observed phenomenon is dependent on and limited by the instrument we use to observe the phenomenon or to measure. This is obvious. Our knowledge of everything we know is dependent on our knowledge of the knower, aka awareness. Simple, and at the same time, unacceptable by most. Why? Beats me, you know. Once you you have agreed to it, it's so evident, it's so clear, it's so obvious. And before, it's such a struggle and resistance. It cannot be true. It's not possible. All the weight of the prevalent ignorance in human community, in the human community. It's not new, it's been like that for centuries.
This is from Anastasia. Hello, Francis. I want to understand, how can I approach setting goals and making plans, given that there is no separate I who would make those plans? I have no problems with practical matters relating to sustaining the body and certain level of its comfort, of its comfortable physical life. My question is, how can I know the right answer to seemingly big decisions in my life? For example, starting a new career or creating a family. Is finding the answers to those questions a spontaneous event, or should I think / analyze / ponder over them?
Follow your heart and your intelligence. For instance, in starting a family or finding a job or deciding about a career. Follow your heart. Don't act from ready-made patterns that society has made for you. For instance, a very common pattern, these two aspects, you know, family, having children, getting married, etc., and having a job, you know. Do that if you enjoy it. Follow your heart. You know, someone came to me lately and told me, you know, I've spent so many years doing medical studies, I have the diploma, and for some reason, I cannot find an internship. And at the same time, my heart would be to teach martial arts, to teach jiu-jitsu. And what I thought is, well, it's kind of normal that life doesn't allow you to find an internship in spite of the years spent doing these medical studies, because your heart is not there, and at the same time you're interested in the truth. So life doesn't want perhaps for you to make a mistake. So I told this guy, follow your heart, do the jiu-jitsu thing. Forget about what Asian parents would like you to do, you know, or to be a doctor, or to be a pharmacist, or to be an engineer, or what else? What else? These are the three main things, right, on the agenda, right? lawyer perhaps. Banking now, okay. So, so make sure that you enjoy being a parent, that's what you would really like to do. Or that, and regarding a profession, the playfulness. So don't, a very wrong way to go about having a family is this notion of I have to do my dharma. I have to live my life as a man, as a woman. You know, I have to get married. I have to have children. I have to raise children. I have to do this. I have to do that. No, you don't have to do anything. You have to be happy, because the best service you can give to mankind is to be happy and to spill this happiness around you. It's more important to give no children to the world and give them happiness than to give them children and misery. You see, it's often, you know, all the religions, they say, okay, go and proliferate, proliferate, proliferate. And then we have global warming. The solution is stop proliferating. That's all the environmental problem. I know nobody said that. That the reason is our proliferation, is human proliferation. It's a simple cause. No, we find all kinds of causes. No, proliferation. Today is carbon emission, tomorrow it will be something else. We are like mold on a big piece of cheese, and there is a limited surface on the piece of cheese, right? As the mold develops, when you look at these images by satellite, you see, of the Earth at night, and you see the lights, and you see the lights of the cities, and it looks like exactly like bacteria develop or fungus develops on a surface of things. You know, you have linear lines of communication. So the Earth is a piece of cheese, and we are the mushrooms. So feel free to be yourself. To be yourself. Trust your heart. Trust your childlikeness. Trust your playfulness. Be an artist, in other words, before being a responsible citizen. You know, it's artists are the most responsible citizens you can imagine. Be an artist. And make your life your work of art.
Frank asks, hello, Francis. What are your thoughts on Christian Science healing?
My thoughts on healing first is choose a good doctor and ask your doctor. That's my thoughts about healing. Now, Christian Science healing, it reminds me of my friend William Samuel. He was in a Christian Science community at church when some guy had a heart attack. And there was a doctor there, and he took to the guy outside so that he could have some air and take care of the guy while everybody else was meditating for the guy to survive. I think that in this case, the action taken by these two guys, the doctor and Bill, were more efficient than the meditation and consciousness of the entire community. I'm not into magical thinking. I'm into practical thinking, you know. The old master of Zen, you know, they were very practical guys. So were the Taoists too. And so was my teacher, very practical.
From Susan. Hi, Francis. Would you talk again about personal and impersonal desire and how to discern the true source?
That's going to get a little bit bored because that's one of the. I should have a list of Q&As, you know, and send you the link. What was an impersonal desire is a desire which is not ignorant, and an ignorant desire is a desire that wouldn't arise unless we believed to be a separate consciousness. That's a concise and mathematical definition of both the personal and impersonal desire. And what was the end of the question?
She just wanted to be able to discern the difference, the source of the desire, whether it was personal or impersonal.
That was the answer. You know, see whether, assume for the sake of the argument that you don't believe to be a separate consciousness. Would this desire still be there? If yes, it's impersonal. If no, it was personal.
Okay, this one's from Faizan Jamil. Hello, Francis. My question is about questions. Sometimes I feel as though asking a question is an effort. Sometimes when a question arises, I may choose to not be interested in it and rest as awareness. The result is that the question dissolves without needing a direct answer. How may I discern whether a question should be entertained or whether I should ignore the thought arising as a question and rest my attention into awareness?
It has to be effortless. And the effortlessness arises out of our interest for the question. A question in which we are interested, we will entertain it effortlessly just because we're interested. And that's the only type of questions we should entertain. The rest. So the effortlessness is the key.
The next question is quite long. It's from Brian. Dear Francis, I am still exploring why, after several years, I am having a sudden intensity to personal sensations.
I have the what?
Sudden intensity.
Sudden
intensity.
Why, after so many years, I have sudden intensity to
personal, quote unquote, sensations. When I first came to see you many years ago, the meditation was intuitive for me immediately, along with clarifying questions and tantric tricks to address residual ignorance. I felt as though the experience of living in truth was quite clear to me after a few years. However, in more recent years, Whenever resistance would arise in my experience, I would assume, quote, oh, I must not be living according to my understanding, end quote. Then I would double down on my, quote, enthusiastic cooperation, end quote, doing more meditation, tantric tricks, reading spiritual literature, looking for signs of a lack of clarity, etc. Upon reflection, I am wondering if this approach has really been at the behest of ignorance, masquerading as the quote, enthusiastic, truth loving cooperator, end quote. I think perhaps this approach has not only exacerbated the very resistances I have been trying to address, but has also frozen the process of dissolution and stagnated the sadhana, if you will. Somehow, I am sensing that the deeper purification process may be to do less at this point in the journey and to accept vasanas as part of the grand show. Does that sound right to you? Thank you so much, Brian.
Yes, because the tantric tricks and all this sadhana can be misunderstood. The moment we believe to be a separate entity, there is this basic misunderstanding about what it is about. The moment there is a limited entity doing the sadhana, pursuing a goal, there is an original mistake on this path. And there is a misunderstanding of the teaching. The tantric tricks in questions are simply, there is a prerequisite, which is the openness to the possibility that we are not a separate awareness as we do them. So the moment we believe to be a separate, and that can go very fast. To be a human body mind doing that, a human truth lover, truth seeker. Also the belief that there is something personal to achieve as a result of this sadhana. Whereas in fact it's just done to, it's like cleaning the house. You don't necessarily do it for yourself, you do it also for everybody who comes visit you. So if you spiritually putting of this house in order, it's not something personal. It has to be understood as for all mankind and for the universe. That's a gift to oneself as the universe, nothing personal. So by listening to your question, the moment we are disappointed the disappointment is always the sign of the belief to be a person. One way people get disappointed by the teaching is they come to the teaching and they take what is said as beliefs. In other words, they switch from one belief system to a different belief system. And that is, at the end of any belief system, there is disappointment. It's unavoidable. Whereas what I say is precisely the opposite. I say, don't believe what I say. Don't believe me. I don't want you to believe me. Check it out for yourself. Verify what I am saying about what you are. Not, if you do this, you'll get that. Because sometimes people come and they say, oh, Francis has told me, if I do this, I get that. And then how comes I didn't get it? It's because of Francis didn't say, if you do this, you get that. Francis really didn't tell you what you are going to get, because I don't know what you're going to get. But if you do this, if you investigate, you get closer to the truth. To investigate further cannot take you further away from the truth. The more you investigate, the closer you get. The closer you get, the happier you get. That's my promise. But my promise is not you get this job, you get this relationship, you get this bank account, you get this. I don't know what you get. Perhaps you just die. That's a good moment to end.